tap dogs and fire hoses on people. The state wants to hold on to, well, we made this agreement with this in the Land Claim Settlement Act with this tribal entity. And generally the federal government and the tribe is saying, that's nice, and that was an agreement, but that was not with the federally recognized tribe called the Narragansetts. Two different things. And so the tribe now has this status, so this document doesn't mean anything.
We do not fall under that auspices any longer. We are a sovereign nation.
We're a nation within a nation. You know, we have that. We have our own bylaws. We have our own police department. We have our own community. And it's tough to live in society with you being a nation within a nation.
It's beyond reach for them to accept that there can be a sovereign nation that predated the history of the country and the establishment of this little state of Rhode Island and Providence plantations, that how can this entity exist as a government when it's just a bunch of folks of color? And in Rhode Island, they'd say, and half of you don't look like natives anyhow. So there's this real disconnect, kind of psychologically. That's kind of the nice version. The not nice version is that it's just flat out racism.
Half these people come down here with dogs. It looks like something out of Mississippi in the damn 60s. The hell's the matter with these people? There's kids in here. These are minors. There's kids.
I would die for my tribe, Chief.
I'm sorry, what are you saying there?
Sovereignty means that we can live our life to the best of our ability, sharing and doing for one another without putting a burden on anyone else. And by selling cigarettes, which was our right as a sovereign nation, we weren't hurting anyone.
What would it mean to the larger community if the tribe was self-sufficient? There's something scary in it for majority folks, and I don't know what it is. The only way to solve problems, to achieve reconciliation, to understand each other is through real, honest, well-intentioned dialogue. And that's not the dialogue that happens with lawyers in the room. It's not the dialogue that happens, at the State House. It's the dialogue that happens when small groups of people get together to actually find out who each other are. And then all of the misconceptions can kind of be dispelled.
ago, and there was just the discourse that happened out in Indian country and the plains around water rights. So indigenous people are still literally fighting, as you saw, with hands and fists, to live their life in a way that is consistent with their values, their beliefs, and their culture, and it certainly is a culture that's been around a lot longer than the current culture, right? So it raises some interesting questions, you know. And so what does this have to do with Newark, you know, in Newark 350? Well, I'm Native American wherever I am. I'm on Turtle Island. All of this is home country. And when something happens in one part of Indian country, it happens everywhere in Indian country, right? It's not like we don't have our own disagreements across, you know, tribal nations, but we understand what it means when we don't take a pan-American approach to some issues. So one of the things that relates to the Ramapough here in New Jersey is, you know, the push for federal recognition, and what does it mean? And sometimes the answer to that comes from having conversations and looking at what's going on with other tribes that have achieved federal recognition, right? So what can we expect, for example? You know, the state of New Jersey has a relationship with the Ramapough Nation right now because we're a state-recognized tribe. How will that relationship change is an important question for us, because the relationship in Narragansett land changes based on the administration, right? Because we have voting seasons. And sometimes, and I'm being pejorative here, I'm making fun of it, sometimes what's written on paper for Native people has no meaning, right? Because over the, I don't know, 500 or 600, whatever it is, number of treaties, I think people can probably count 10 that have actually been honored. So these are important questions, and within Indian country, we look to each other to have these discussions and this discourse to figure out how do we move forward. What should we be doing? You know, and this is a continental question as much as it is a local question. So, you know, I have an Israeli colleague that I worked with. She says you have to use the term global, Maria. And I said, you're right, local. It's a combination of global and local. That nothing is truly isolated to the local. Everything ultimately has a global impact, and vice versa. The global does impact the local. So, you know, when this was happening, I was living in the area. The road where the smoke shop is a road that my daughter and I would drive along to take the dogs, you know, to the kennel or to go to the beach. And so they arrested a lot of indigenous people that day, and many of them were hurt physically from the physical brutality and from dog bites, and there were a lot of suits that followed after the larger suit, and as part of it. And so part of a breach of the sovereignty is to maintain the jurisprudence process for as long as possible. It took over 10 years for this issue to be resolved. These are the poor people. How do you maintain the cost of a 10-year legal battle? So it's another form of oppression, right? So you make sure that they run out of funds, they run out of energy, right? All of those types of things. This is very common in Indian country. I mean, people are still trying to negotiate treaties from the 1700s. You know, you can ask the Northern Nations people about that in upstate New York. So, so when I think of Newark, as an indigenous person and somebody who lived here and grew up here, went to school here during my formative years, I recognize, you know, the dangers as well as the benefits of expressing who you are. Many Native American people hide. Like if I were to show you, for example, my birth certificate from Trenton, you would see that at one time I was white, one time I was colored, another time I was Negro. This is very common in Indian country. This is the 21st century, right? And nobody can figure out what I am. This is very common in Indian country because we look at people and we say, oh, you look like, right? What does that mean? What does that mean, you look like? So there's a racialization that is a part of the larger racialization discourse where color trumps culture, unfortunately, and so the cultural argument always has to be made, and there's the appropriation of the culture as well. Which is very evident. But one of the saddest things, and I'll close with this, is that shortly after this happened, my daughter and I were driving in the area to take the dog to the kennel. We got stopped. Supposedly I was doing 85 miles per hour in like a 40-mile zone, okay, which I was not. I had the most precious thing that I have in the world, my daughter, in the car, so I was not doing that. But I was stopped. There were 2 officers in the car, and they got out, immediately unsnapped their holster for their arms, had their hands on the holsters. One came around on my daughter's side of the car, one came around on my side of the car, and of course, Senorita Rosita, who is our chocolate lab, was barking her head off the way she normally does, and because, you know, she understood the aggression with good dog sense. And when the officer got to my window, which was down because the weather was warm given the time of the year, he told me, you know, you need to get your dog to stop barking, I'm going to have to shoot it. And I very calmly looked at him and said, then you will have to shoot my dog. Right? And I think that surprised him. He didn't back down. Then he said, well, I need you to get something out of the glove compartment. Now, we all know this, right? Any person of color knows you do not get anything out of the glove compartment. All right? That is as set up as you can get, right? You don't act on compound questions or demands. What I need is your license and your registration. Now, my license is not going to be in the glove compartment. Yeah. My registration will be. Don't act on that double command. Right? You take out the license and then you say, would you like me to get my registration now? Because my daughter is getting ready to reach for the glove compartment, and I told her, don't touch anything, don't move. Later on, because we were taking classes at Nanticoke Museum, we were sitting around the table engaged in ceramics and pottery making. And then all of a sudden, all these women started telling similar stories. What they were doing was profiling Native women and stopping them and intimidating them as part of the response to the Nahagansets holding their own regarding the smoke shop. This is over cigarettes. And we've seen similar things over cigarettes in New York City recently, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yeah. So this is a part, so this discussion is larger sometimes than looking at specific communities, which is, you know, to have that broader discourse about, you know, so what is it about the American psyche? You know, what makes it so challenging? And, you know, why do people of indigenous ethnicity sometimes have to hide who they are? You know, because growing up in the North, Eileen can tell you, it was really hard because people wanted you to declare, you know, so you black or what? That was one of my favorite questions. And then, yeah. And then other people would come up and, oh, señorita, hablo español. Yes, no. No, my name is not hablo or español. So, yeah, and again, it's based on an assumption when you approach people. And if we can unpack a lot of those assumptions, we might actually begin to have the type of discourse that was so beautifully articulated by the professor from the University of Rhode Island in the sovereign video that you just saw. So how we image others is really important to how also people will image us, right? So I am going to end here because I think we're out of time. I have 11:03. But I want to make sure that you all have a chance to ask questions, and maybe there are questions I can answer. If I can't answer them, I will tell you, which is not helpful to you at all, but but if I can, I will. But thank you. You're a wonderful audience. I appreciate it. You did great on the quiz, so that's really important. Any questions from anyone? Because I've always got questions. I'm a professor, boy. I can ask you all a bunch of questions. I always have questions for you.
There's one over here.
I don't see it because I don't have glasses on. Oh my goodness. Well, speak up then.